The night of the crash, the inside of my car smelled like hot plastic and pennies. The dash folded into my legs like origami, and I remember thinking that if I blinked too hard, the darkness would finally swallow me. A man's voice somewhere above me kept saying, "Stay with me," and I watched a small square of sky turn from gray to purple as they cut the door away. They wheeled me through sliding doors at Summit Regional, a fluorescent river swallowing me whole. There were hands on my face, the hollowness of the CT scanner, a bright, dull ache in my ribs. When the meds settled like silt in my bloodstream, I stared at the doorway of my room and listened for footsteps I knew so well I could identify them by weight alone. Mom's quick, efficient taps. Dad's heavy heel-to-toe. My sister's heels. They didn't come. A nurse with laugh lines, I'd learn her name was Ava, tucked a warm blanket under my arms the way my mom used to when I was little. She asked me who to call, and I said, my parents. When the phone went to voicemail twice, I gave her Kelly's number. Later, when I could hold the phone, I had a text waiting in the thread named Family. We're in the middle of final walkthrough with the venue coordinator. Can we come tomorrow? You always bounce back, Lore. We can bring you peonies for your room. It'll brighten things up. I lay there with the taste of blood and plastic in my mouth, the sound of distant wheels squeaking down the hall, and learned a new kind of silence. There's the quiet of a car with the music turned low and the windows cracked, and then there's the quiet of being a daughter whose pain has to stand in line behind a seating chart. I was 31 the spring the world decided to tilt. My name is Lauren, and I grew up in a mid-sized Ohio town, the kind with one mall that used to be booming and now hosts walking clubs and a seasonal Santa with a loose belt. Mapleton has 4 decent pizza places, an annual summer festival in the square, and a library so sunlit you could fall in love with yourself between the stacks. That's where I worked, Mapleton Public. I ran storytime with a green felt frog puppet and a talent for different character voices, then spent my afternoons recommending books to retired teachers and teenagers pretending not to be shy. I have a daughter, Madeline, but everyone called her Maddie. 6 years old, lost her front tooth the week before the crash, proud as if she'd negotiated a business merger. She had hair the color of toasted wheat and eyes that darkened when she was working something out, like how long she could stay up if she pretended to be asleep every time I checked on her. Her dad, Wes, lives in Columbus and floats in and out like a weather pattern. He loves her in an intermittent way that leaves space for disappointment to grow like mold. My parents, Diane and Rick, live across town in a 2-story with a trimmed lawn and a welcome sign out front that has never once lied to our neighbors. They're friendly and competent. My mom makes lists like she's paid by the bullet point, and my dad is a contractor who stands in doorways he's installed and declares, solid. My sister Kelly is 3 years younger and has been the star of every family photo since she could coordinate her outfits. She'd been planning her wedding to a guy named Ben for 9 months by the time metal met metal on Route 17. We always had roles in our family. Kelly was the vision. I was the helper. If Kelly had an idea, I figured out where to get it on sale and how to assemble it with a hot glue gun and a measuring tape. When their wedding got serious, I stepped up. I sat with Kelly on the floor of her apartment among swatches and half-burned candles labeled white linen and sea salt. I tasted cake samples with my eyes closed while Maddie licked the frosting and declared herself the official decider. When Kelly sent me a picture of a pale blush bridesmaid dress, I typed, gorgeous, even though pale blush makes me look like a ghost who caught a cold. We'd always been taught that weddings were the capstone of a life well orchestrated. It's not just a party, Mom said at the first brunch with Kelly's in-laws. It's the ceremony of family. She didn't mean anything religious. She meant optics. She meant making sure the registry was a mix of aspirational and politic. She meant chairs in straight rows and that hydrangeas wilt if you look at them wrong. Sometimes, being the helper meant swallowing small hurts so the machine ran smoothly. When Mom borrowed the savings account I'd been tucking away for grad school to hold a place for the venue deposit, we had a quiet conversation in her kitchen with the ice machine humming between us. It's temporary, she said, patting the bank envelope. We'll square it all up after, Lauren. This is the only time she'll get to do this. I wanted to say I'd have only one chance to go where my ideas lived, too. I wanted to say a lot. Instead, I told her I understood. It wasn't the first time our family converted love into a line item. When the crash happened in late March, I was leaving the library in rain that messed with visibility so badly the world looked like a watercolor painting someone tried to wash off the paper. A delivery truck slid into the intersection on a yellow that was really a red, and my Corolla took the brunt of a lesson in physics. People were kind. They say that like it's rare, and in my life, it isn't, but it felt novel then, maybe because my wrist shook when I reached for anything and it was a relief to be held by strangers while my own people were busy. Ava, the nurse, kept my secrets while I waited. She let me hold her phone to FaceTime Maddie and see the glittered sticker constellation on my face where the airbag burned me. "Mom, you look like a planet," Maddie said, and smiled so big her new gap felt like an invitation into a new season of her life. "Can I bring you my all?" She meant the worn stuffed doll with one eye. "Tomorrow," I said, my voice a papery thing. "I'll be home tomorrow." But the bruise on my right side deepened until breathing felt like a job. 2 fractured ribs. A hairline fracture in my pelvis. Airbag burns that would itch as they recovered. A small miracle that I'd been alone and restrained. No child in a booster seat absorbing the laws of mass and momentum. Under the relief was a guilt I couldn't name. Relief I was hurt and not her. Relief, too, that I had proof I was not made up of only responsible choices. Mom's text the next morning, "We'll swing by after the florist. Grandma Eleanor is insisting on roses, but they're not in season. We'll bring coffee." I stared at the words for so long they became shapes. Then I put the phone down and pictured Kelly's wedding Pinterest board, the one with too many mason jars. At lunch, Ava slid into the chair beside me, her scrubs the color of the sky on a good day. "Your folks coming later?" she asked, setting a cup of ice on my tray without my asking, like she'd been my mother for just long enough. I nodded. "They're busy with wedding stuff." Ava's face did something I couldn't fully read and don't want to put words on now. Sympathy is a hand people offer you that you don't always know how to take without brushing your teeth first. "Do you need anything?" she said instead. I thought I needed my mom. What I got, what I didn't know I needed, was a small army of people who had no stake in our family's choreography. Janelle, my friend from high school who now taught 3rd grade across town, talked to me late each night until I couldn't keep my eyes open, bringing a bag of grocery store sushi and a plastic plant to my hospital window. Mr. Patel from 2 houses down drove Maddie to school. The librarian who'd trained me when I was 19, Ms. Carlson, organized a meal train and gave me a stack of mystery novels I had to put face down because my chest hurt when I laughed. The first night Mom and Dad didn't come, I made excuses for them and fell asleep making more. The second night they didn't come, I stopped. After 3 days at Summit Regional, they sent me home in a brace that made me feel like a low-budget transformer, with instructions for pain management and a warning not to lift anything heavier than a grocery bag until further notice. "No stair running," Ava said, smiling. "And no wedding henchman duties." "Bridesmaid," I said, almost reflexive, then let the word fall like a coin into water. The brace squeaked under my shirt as I moved, and my apartment, 2nd floor, 1.5 bedrooms that had always felt cozy, grew vertical. Every task, every lift and bend, was something to negotiate. Ava gave me a list of physical therapy clinics. Janelle cleared the lower shelf in my fridge and left sticky notes at eye level. Milk. Yogurt. Ibuprofen. The hours became a tide. Morning with cartoons, afternoon with a book while Maddie colored beside me, evening with her weight tucked against my side like an anchor. My parents came for the first time a week later. Mom brought a floral arrangement so symmetrical it looked like it had been drafted with a ruler. "How's our invalid?" Dad said, bending to kiss my forehead, a man who could not make light of a thing even when it warranted weight. They stood in my doorway like visitors on a tour. Mom tried to keep her voice clean of worry. "You know you gave me a heart attack." "I called," I said. "I know," she said, pulling a folder from her tote. "But the timing was impossible. The venue. The rentals. Rick, show her the swatches. Kelly is going for modern but soft. What do you think of these?" Even now, I don't know if it was malice or muscle memory. If you've done something the same way for years, you can forget other options exist. I squeezed the fabric samples and tried to picture the room where my daughter would dance barefoot with a small cup of soda. Good things would happen there, too. It was hard to find a place in my chest for all the truths at once. When is your follow-up? Dad asked, not looking at me but at his phone. Tuesday. I reached for the water on the table and winced. Mom didn't notice. Kelly wants to go shopping for your dress, Mom said. She found a boutique that can work magic. Maybe we can go next Saturday? She said you could do the stairs if you go slow. My doctor said no stairs, I said. Not yet. Of course, Mom said, her eyes moving past me to the stack of coloring books on the chair, to the lunch dishes in the sink. We're all adjusting. I'll talk to her. They left after an hour, my floral arrangement the only evidence they'd been there, fragrant and heavy. When the door closed, I pressed my palm to the cool wood and let my forehead rest there in a pose I know looks like a prayer in other people's houses, but in mine was just a quiet place to put a moment. 2 weeks later, swelling had gone down, bruises blooming yellow then fading. I was back at the library part-time, moving carefully through the stacks. Maddie liked to come after school and curl up in the children's section with a stack of animal books. It was a Thursday when she said, "My head is tired." It was a tiny sentence, delivered in the calm voice she used when she'd made up her mind about something. She had a nosebleed that night that took longer to stop than it should have. The next week, a new bruise appeared on her shin that she couldn't explain in the way kids usually can. Bike, fall, playground, bravado. She got winded on the stairs. Then, in May, I saw a splotch of tiny red dots on her collarbone and knew enough from late-night Googling to drive her to urgent care before the patient registration sticker had cooled on my insurance card. At Summit Regional, the pediatric wing smells like crayons and disinfectant, a combination that finds a back road into your memory and never leaves. They took blood. They took more blood. They sent a young doctor in with steady hands and an older doctor in with formidable softness, and then they said the word that knocked all the other words out of the room. "Let us be careful with the next steps," Dr. Monroe said, an oncologist with salt and pepper hair and a tie that made children smile. He drew a diagram of marrow on a piece of paper and explained that this was common, treatable, the survival rate high. He used the phrase, "This will be a marathon," which I filed away in the locker of metaphors I'd never use out loud because the word felt cruel next to my child's small body. I sat very still and tried to keep my face from cracking into 1,000 pieces. "I want my owl," Maddie said in the hospital bed, and I promised her that we would honor that need as if it were sacred, because it was. Treatment started the next morning. Port placement. A rainbow of medications explained in a voice I could understand. A calendar that took over my life. In the space of a day, I learned to recognize the particular beep of our room, the shuffle of morning rounds, and the way a nurse named Ava could take one look at me and know if I'd eaten anything besides coffee. "Who do you want me to call?" she asked, her hand on my shoulder like a steadying wall. "Everyone," I said. "My parents. My sister. Wes." The hospital room became an airport with delays. Mom said, "We're at the cake tasting. We'll be there after." Dad said, "Sit tight." Kelly texted me a picture of a 3-tiered cake covered in sugar flowers and wrote, "She'll love this. We'll bring samples." When she did show up, bright and pink and buzzing, she leaned over the bed and said, "You're going to beat this, kiddo," and Maddie believed her, because why wouldn't she believe the person in our family whose promises had always come with nice handwriting? Mom arrived later, her face tired in a way she tried to hide. "We can't postpone," she said quietly, her voice pitched low so I would understand how adult this conversation needed to be. "It will cost too much, Lauren. People have already booked travel. We can be 2 places." "No, we can't," I said. "We can be here, or we can be there." "We'll be here after the rehearsal dinner," she said quickly. "We'll alternate. We'll bring you dinner." "The dress fitting." "I can't go to a dress fitting," I said. "I can barely breathe without asking permission from a pain I've never felt before." She blinked. "That's dramatic." "Don't," I said, and the word came out as air. I texted Janelle because she understood how to talk to me when my relatives were busy constructing realities they preferred. She arrived with a tote bag the size of a love seat, full of snacks called things like Pirate's Treasure and bunny-shaped crackers that made me think of the before times when we had different emergencies. She also brought a Sharpie and wrote our room number on the back of my hand, like I would forget where home had shifted to. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, the pressure grew quietly but steadily, like someone had their palm pressed against my sternum. Maddie's labs went down, then up, then down. Hair began to come out in soft, violent handfuls. Ava taught me how to swab Maddie's mouth when Source turned eating into work. My parents visited, then didn't, came again wearing the shine of someone trying to step into and out of two lives simultaneously and failing both. They offered rides, suggested videos Kelly would love for the wedding slideshow, and smiled like they were hosting a party inside their faces. I don't remember a single thing Dad said those days except, "This is going to make us stronger," which is what he says when a wall takes water. Mom's eyes flicked constantly between me and Maddie and the monitor, as if her gaze could keep any of us alive. Kelly brought me a bridesmaid dress in a garment bag and asked me to try it on in the hospital bathroom. "We can hem it so you don't trip," she said, and her voice was so cheerful it hurt. "Maddie can be the flower girl in a wagon if she's tired. People will cry. It will be beautiful." "People are already crying," I said. She flinched, then put her hand on my forearm and squeezed. "Don't make this about you, Lore." The day I realized I'd lost the ability to keep swallowing for the sake of the machine was a Tuesday, 2 weeks before Kelly's wedding. The morning had been a Hail Mary of stability. Maddie's counts were good. The chemo mix adjusted to keep her stomach from roiling, but by afternoon she was curled on her side, pale and sweaty, the monitor beeping a rhythm that settled under my skin. Ava adjusted the 4 and murmured to her in a soft voice. Janelle rubbed my shoulders. I slipped my shoes off because my feet felt like they were on fire and ice at the same time. I'd been awake for 26 hours. I was 3 texts deep in a chain from my mother about whether we could do Maddie's headscarf in the wedding colors. At 4, a representative from a foundation stopped by to see if we needed help with travel stipends. She had kind eyes and a binder full of paperwork that might have been oxygen if I'd had the hands to breathe for us both. "Yes," I said when she asked if anyone else was supporting us. "My parents are very involved." I meant they were involved in being involved. At 5, Mom called to say she and Dad wouldn't make it that night because the venue had changed the charger plates without notifying them, and this is the last straw, with a caterer that had been a stack of straws from the beginning. "Do you want us to send someone?" she asked. "We could send Kelly." "No," I said, and my no felt round and complete and old. "I don't want you to send anyone. If you can't be here, don't be. We're okay." "You're not okay," she said, then stopped, like she heard herself. "I didn't mean." "I heard you," I said. At 7, Maddie spiked a fever. You learn in the oncology ward, the fever threshold that takes a shift and turns it into an emergency. Nurses moved fast. Ava's calm narrowed. I stood by the bed and watched oxygen blow through tubes that looked like they'd been designed for a different life. The room smelled like antiseptic and strawberry lip balm, the one I put on her because her lips cracked. I kissed her forehead and felt heat that mocked me for counting things at all. At 9, Mom sent a photo. The table settings were gorgeous, I'll admit it. Candlelight, linen napkins folded into geometric shapes. "We fixed it," she wrote. "See? Everything is going to be okay." I put the phone face down on the tray table and felt something crack under the weight of being expected to perform relief I didn't feel so someone else's narrative would stay smooth. At 1 in the morning, I pulled the shades down against the night and sent a text that lit a match to a field we had all been pretending wasn't this dry. "I'm not going to the wedding." I watched the dots on my screen blink, the digital version of someone inhaling to speak. The responses came like a spill. "Mom, we've all made sacrifices." "Dad, sleep on it." "Kelly, are you kidding me right now? You're supposed to be next to me. You're my sister. Don't do this to me. Don't do this to me." The phrase played like a bad ringtone while Ava changed the dressing at the port and whispered, "It's okay, sweet pea. You're strong. We're right here." "I'm here," I said to my daughter. At 3, Kelly called. I stepped into the hallway and leaned against the wall hard enough that the brace creaked. "You're not going to do this," she said, skipping hello. "You are not going to yank the rug out from under me 2 weeks before. We can get a wheelchair. This can be sweet. This can be the thing people remember, that you showed up for us even when you were going through it." How powerful that would be. I'm not a subplot for your montage, I said. It's one day, Lauren, she said, her voice tight small. It's my one day. You've had your drama for months. We're in a hospital, I said. There's nothing dramatic about chemo. It's just chemicals and time and hope in the form of routines. If you need my chair filled at your altar more than you need me, you'll be fine without me there. You're selfish, she said. Mom is right, you always find a way to make everything about you. I pictured my mother's face and wondered when she'd decided that. I felt tired in a way I had no name for. Good night, I said, and hung up. The plan or the breaking point. Sometimes a breaking point looks like a slam. Mine looked like a binder. The next morning, I walked down to the social work office with my brace squeaking and asked to speak with Marisol, the woman with the calm hands and the eyes that said she'd seen every version of a person falling apart. I set my phone and a yellow legal pad on her desk and said, I need to build a wall. Tell me what's on both sides, she said. On one side is my kid and me. On the other is my family's need to convert our lives into content. She nodded, not flinching. Okay. I told her about the alternations between ambulances and cake tastings, about the time Mom asked if we could bring the 4-pole to a family photo because it would be meaningful, about the way Dad had started a group chat called Team Maddie that quickly turned into a logistics chain for who would bring casseroles to which people. I told her how my parents kept reminding me we were lucky to have this much support, as if gratitude were a debt I owed them. And I told her about money. A week earlier, Kelly had set up a fundraiser online. She meant well at first, I think. The link had a picture of Maddie holding her owl. The caption read, Help Maddie fight. Money poured in because people are generous and good. Strangers sent $25 with messages that made my throat ache. You got this, kiddo. From one mom to another. A little something for snacks. The funds linked to an account my mother had created to take the burden off me because you have enough going on. I'd asked to see the statements. She told me not to stress. She had it under control. Marisol was quiet as she wrote. Let me connect you with legal aid, she said. They can advise you about the fundraiser. Also, we can assign a hospital liaison to communicate with your family. You don't have to be the switchboard and the operator. I don't want to blow up my family, I said. I just want them to stop thinking my life is a stage bit in something prettier. She nodded. Boundaries aren't bombs if you set them carefully. Marisol called legal aid while I sat there, the phone pressed to my ear before I realized I had agreed to hold. A man named Derek came on the line with a voice that sounded like a mid-afternoon radio show. He asked calm questions. He used words like fiduciary and mismanagement and said them gently, as if to apologize for how they sounded. Print every relevant text, he said. Download the donation site activity. Ask your mother, in writing, to show you the account balance. You can make it a neutral request. This is your daughter's fund. You get to ask. I went back to the room and opened a new email draft to my mother. I kept it simple. Mom, for my records and peace of mind, please send me the current balance and past month statements for the fundraiser account you opened for Maddie. I need to keep track for insurance coordination and possible tax docs. Thanks, Lauren. She responded quickly, of course. We'll send after I run an errand. At noon, she texted, spending a chunk on balloons for the reception. Kelly found a good deal on an arch, and it will be a showstopper. We can reimburse after the honeymoon. The account will bounce back. It took me a full minute to understand. I stared at the words and then read them aloud, hoping they would choose to mean something else out of shame. They didn't. I called her. You did not, I said, my voice shaking. Lauren, she said, patient like I was an employee who needed gentle correction. I told you I'd keep it balanced. We are in a crunch this week. It is not like we're running off to Bermuda with it. It is like you're running off to a balloon arch with it, I said. Something inside me clicked into place. It was not rage. It was clarity. Take down the fundraiser. Don't be dramatic, she said. We are giving people an opportunity to help. They want to feel useful. So do we. Take it down or I will. She went quiet. I pictured her face going still in a way I recognized from childhood moments when I'd stepped out of line. You need to calm down, she said. Your sister's life doesn't stop because yours got complicated. My life didn't get complicated, I said. My child got cancer. There's a lot of overlap, she said, as if she wanted to win the point and end the round. I hung up on my mother for the first time in my life. Janelle had me do something with my hands immediately after because she knows that sometimes your nervous system needs a job. She slid a stack of papers toward me and had me staple and hole punch and tab until the binder in front of me looked like control. On the front, I wrote in marker, Maddie. Inside, I put copies of messages, notes from doctors, a calendar, the fundraiser screen grabs, the download of the donations, and a list of legal resources. I added a tab labeled boundaries. I wrote down rules. The hospital room is not a wedding planning office. Money raised in Maddie's name is for medical and living expenses only. No one posts pictures or updates without my approval. I won't attend the wedding if Maddie is inpatient or ill. Questions go through Marisol. I took a photo of the list and sent it to the family chat with one sentence. These are our rules now. This is what loving us looks like. The day of Kelly's wedding, I wore sweatpants and a t-shirt from a local 5K. The hospital room was cold in the morning, then warm with bodies, then quiet by noon. The nurse on shift, a guy named Marcus, whose eyes held entire phrases, taped a paper heart to the door with our room number on it. He did it for every kid who had a procedure that day, and I loved him with a gratitude that didn't have a category. At 9, Kelly texted a photo of herself in a silk robe with a glass of something fizzy in her hand, her hair glossy, the room around her staged for the kind of picture you show your grandkids. She was beautiful. She looked like our mother's idea of a perfect moment. Thinking of you, she wrote. Wish you were here. I took a picture of myself holding Maddie's hand and wrote, I am. That morning, Maddie's fever finally broke. We watched a movie about a horse. We colored pictures of things we could grow if we had a backyard, and I promised we would plant tomatoes in pots when we got home. We ate Jell-O out of those bendy plastic cups. We waited for lab results that would determine whether we could leave the much-too-clean version of a life we hadn't signed up for. At noon, Mom called from the dressing room. We're lining up, she said, her words breathless. Ben's mother is crying already. I wish you could see the chairs. It's perfect. Love you, I said. Give her a kiss for me. I will, she said, and then, when Maddie's older, she'll understand. Someday. Someday, I repeated, the words sharp in my mouth. At 1, a volunteer came by with a cart of toys. Maddie picked a set of plastic animals and a puzzle of the solar system. The volunteer asked if we needed anything else. I almost asked for my mother to be someone else for a day, then let the thought drift away like it was heavy and I was tired and the magnetism of hurt would do its work on its own. At 2, my father sent a text, walking the bride. Proud of you for understanding. I stared at the phrase like it was in a language I once learned that never made sense in my mouth. Proud of me for understanding. Understanding what? That my job was to disappear for the sake of beauty? At 3, my phone pinged with a notification from the fundraiser account. Withdrawal alert, $1,500. I hadn't closed it because I hadn't had the energy to figure out the maze of taking it down and notifying donors. I hadn't closed it because I still wanted to believe my mother's voice when she said she was borrowing. I opened the mobile banking app I'd finally had my name added to after legal aid sent a letter on real letterhead requesting it and scrolled past yesterday. 2 days earlier, $800 had gone to a vendor called Pop and Petals. Last week, $3,200 to a place I recognized as the venue. The pattern wrote a confession my mother would never say out loud. I stood up and sat back down because the room tilted. I showed the screen to Janelle, who said, okay, with the kind of steadiness one uses when the plane hits turbulence and you want to be the person people look at. We have to stop this, I said. We will, she said, and took my phone. Marisol came in 20 minutes later, the universe's internal timer impeccable. I got your text, she said, and looked at the account like a mother looking at mess her kids swore wasn't theirs. Do you want to deal with this today? I wanted to stop today, I said. She called Derek. He asked for screenshots, then nodded when I showed him the sum. Okay, he said. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to send a cease and desist for withdrawal of funds unrelated to Maddie's care. We're going to notify the donation platform. And we're going to call your mother, not for a fight, but for a record. I don't want to ruin her wedding day, I said, then felt the words burn my tongue. He gave me a look I wish I could print on a billboard outside every hospital. Your mother ruined your relationship by prioritizing aesthetics over ethics. Taking legal steps to stop theft is not drama. It's protection. Marisol set her phone on speaker, typed a sentence for me in the Notes app that said, "This call may be recorded," and pointed at it. I read it aloud when Mom answered. She hesitated. "Okay," she said, a question and a protest. I took a breath and felt my ribs hold, finally, like a house that had been reinforced. "Mom, the fundraiser. I see the withdrawals. This has to stop." "I told you I would make it right," she said. "Do you know how much this wedding cost? Do you know how much your sister has planned since she was a child? Do you know what it would look like if we canceled?" People would talk. They always do. They can talk about how we do the right thing when it's hard. Easy for you to say when you're not the one paying deposits. "I am," I said, my voice rising, the first time that day I let anything spill over. "I am paying deposits. I am paying in every currency we have. This is not a faux crisis you can fix with a mirror and a napkin. Stop taking money that wasn't given to you." "I'm your mother," she said. "We're a family. There's no you and me money." "There is now," I said. I would love to tell you that this conversation cracked something open in her that let light in. I would love to tell you that she gasped and said, "What have I done?" Instead, there was a long pause in which I could hear the murmur of a room full of women behind her and the sound of laughter I used to find intoxicating. "We'll talk when this day is over," she said, her voice cool like water. "No," I said. "We'll talk now, for the record. Because I need to say this out loud to you and to anyone who will replay this later when they decide what version of me fits better with their story. Any money you take from that account for anything other than Maddie's care is theft." "Don't threaten me," she said softly, and hung up. Derek looked at me. "I'm sorry," he said, and he meant it. He sent the notices. The donation platform froze the account pending investigation. Legally, it was fuzzy. People had given money to a person they assumed would use it for the stated purpose. People assume a lot of things. In the span of an afternoon, I felt the fragile boundary between our family's image and our impact collapse in my hands. At 6, a cousin I hadn't seen since college sent me a video of the ceremony. Kelly looked radiant. The arch was a sea of balloons and flowers like a cloud had decided to settle over their vows. As Ben spoke, the camera panned to my parents. Mom's face was shining, luminous with the kind of love she is absolute hell and high water at when she chooses. Dad's jaw worked like he was chewing back something that wouldn't fit. People clapped when they kissed. Confetti floated. A child laughed. The sun did what it always does and made everything look better for a moment. I closed my eyes and pressed my cheek to Maddie's hair, stubbly soft against my face. "We're okay," I said to her and to me. "We are exactly where we belong." The Monday after the wedding, my parents arrived at the hospital, the gravity around them larger than the room. Mom had on a cardigan the color of sunrise. Dad wore a tie, which he only did when someone had died or he wanted to make a meeting look official. "Can we talk?" Mom said, and did not ask. We stepped into the family lounge down the hall, the room with a coffee machine that sings and a TV that inevitably plays cartoons for adults who need anesthesia in the form of sitcoms. Mom closed the door. "We need to reset," she said, lowering herself into a chair like she was about to deliver a verdict, not an apology. I waited. "You embarrass me," she said. "You froze the account on my daughter's wedding day." "You took money," I said. "You took it after I asked you not to." Dad cleared his throat. His voice aims for reasonable. "We fronted a lot early on. Hotel rooms. Groceries. Your rent the month you were off work. We didn't ask for receipts." "I didn't ask you to withdraw funds raised for our kid to pay for balloons," I said. My voice was shaking. "Anger makes you shaky. It's not softness. It's electric." "We'll pay it back," Mom said. "When?" I said. "In the fall," Dad said. "After the final vendor checks clear." I looked at the clock on the wall. It ticked in an arrhythmic way that made the room feel unstable. "By then, we may be out of the acute phase," I said. "We may have different needs." "You always think the worst," Mom said, and the sentence hit like a snowball with a rock inside. I breathed through the impulse to speak at the volume my body suggested. "I am thinking about what is in front of us," I said. "Right now." Mom folded her hands. You have to stop punishing us for trying to make joy in this family. Joy doesn't look like theft, I said. She recoiled, then regrouped, a woman whose whole life had prepared her to recover from words. If you make this legal, you will force us to make choices we can't undo, she said. Is that what you want? My father slipped a folded piece of paper across the table. An itemized list. We kept track, he said. I scanned the list. Groceries, $62. Gas, $40. Hotel for Aunt June, $120. Bridal shower rental, $450, added underlined. At the bottom, a total with a suggested repayment plan that twisted my mouth into an expression I'm glad no one caught. Are you invoicing me for your mistake? I said. We're asking for fairness, Mom said. What does fairness look like to you? I asked, if not leaving me with enough to keep the lights on. It looks like you understanding that everything we've built is on the line if people think we're not a family, Mom said, her voice shaking now too. We can't have you airing our laundry. I'm not airing anything, I said. I'm hanging it up to dry. Dad leaned forward, his face softening. We love you, he said. We love Maddie. We don't always do it the way you want, but we're here. No, I said. You're over there, with a balloon arch. And I'm in here. He flinched, then stood. Don't think we won't fight if you attack us, he said, and left, choosing his words carefully, as if I held a weapon rather than a binder with tabs. I filed a police report. I didn't expect them to do much, and they didn't. The detective was kind and bored, a slick combo. He said, family gets messy, like he was ordering a burger. Derek sent a demand letter. He filed for mediation, a small claim for misappropriation. The donation platform unfroze the account with a notation. Funds will be disbursed at the discretion of primary beneficiary only. The messages from my relatives split like a creek deciding where to go, some checking in on us with real questions, some telling me I'd been hard on Mom, some silent in a way that felt like they were hiding behind a couch while the living room burned. Kelly didn't reach out. A week later, she posted a wedding album online with a caption about Joy boycotting hard times. In the fourth picture, there's a close-up of the balloon arch, and I saw it for what it was, a beautiful, temporary, expensive cluster of breath. Then things got worse. Maddie relapsed in August, and all the numbers went in the wrong direction like they were caught in a current. They adjusted medications. They talked to me about words like transplant and donor search and the window we have. Ava hugged me after I signed a consent form that shook in my hands. I called Wes, who drove up and slept in a recliner and cried in the bathroom the way I did when I wanted to keep her space light. The mediation got scheduled for September. I asked to postpone. The court said yes because sometimes paperwork wins small kindnesses. We all stood in hallways on different days, pretending we weren't in the same life. I thought about calling my mother 100 times and didn't. I stopped apologizing to myself for the unclosed circle of our calls. For a few weeks in late September, Maddie's hair started to grow back soft as a dandelion. She wore headbands and insisted on pink sprinkles on everything. She drew a picture of me as a superhero wearing a library cardigan, a drawing I stuck to the wall with tape and hope. She practiced writing her name. The nurses who had become family did a dance party in our room to celebrate a good lab. I learned not to exhale fully when anything seemed better. It sounds stupid until the worst happens. Then it becomes muscle memory. In November, we held a service at Mapleton Community Center because the funeral home felt like a set someone else had decorated for a show I didn't want to be in. The room had high windows and a neutral carpet that would never make it into a magazine. We put up photos of Maddie on boards, in a dinosaur onesie, on the swings at the park near our apartment, grinning proud with her tooth gap, wearing a headscarf the day we cut our hair off together. We laid out craft paper and markers on a long table and asked people to write a memory or a wish, not because it would help her. Help is a funny word when there's nothing to be done, but because it might help us carry something forward that didn't feel like a lie. I wore a black dress that didn't hug anywhere and shoes I could stand in. Janelle moved like a stage manager and a sister I didn't know I had. Miss Carlson was there in a cardigan with butterflies on it. The nurses came, too, Ava with flowers and a hug that didn't try to fix me, Marcus with a shy nod that said more than any sentence I've ever heard. Wes stood with red-rimmed eyes and a hand on my back the way a person does a thing when there's nothing else to do. My parents came on time, which was a surprise. Mom wore navy. Dad wore a tie. They stood by the door like they might greet people, then didn't. When they approached me, Mom put her hand on my elbow and whispered, "This is a lovely space." It was the safest thing she could think to say. "Thank you for coming," I said, which is what you say to people before you realize there are things that need saying more. When it was time, the community center guy adjusted the mic and stepped back. I walked to the front and faced a room full of the opposite of empty. I didn't have a speech in my pocket. I had a voice and a small fact that framed everything else. My love for Maddie was the most honest thing I have ever done. She was 6, I said. And then she was not. She liked horse books and green grapes and looking for the moon out the window on our drives home from the hospital. She once told me she liked my driving better than her dad's because I take the turns careful. People smiled wetly. She hated the smell of rubbing alcohol, loved stickers, and wanted to be a vet. She asked me once why arms are called arms, and I told her because of how they hold. "I'm sorry I can't hold you now, Maddie Bird, but I will keep building every other way I can." I stopped and breathed. Avi, the music therapist from the hospital, a woman with short hair and eyes that knew things, played a song on the guitar that made the room go quiet in a way reverence does in other rooms. Then something happened I hadn't planned for. My mother stood. She walked up to the front like she was crossing a stage, and I could sense the posture of a person who has worn the same role for so long they cannot imagine another. She took the mic. "Madeline was," she began, and then her voice broke in a way that seemed to surprise even her. She looked at me, and for a second, I saw her not as my mother, but as a person standing near a cliff, curious about the drop. "I did not understand," she said softly. "You told me what you needed, and I did not understand. I kept dressing a moment that was undressing you." The room got very, very still. "I can't fix what I broke," she said. "But I can say it out loud. We handled this terribly. I handled this terribly. I thought the way to save us was to arrange us. I was wrong." She looked at the board of pictures and reached her hand out, then let it fall. "I am sorry," she said. "It is late. I am sorry." It is a strange thing, the way a sincere apology feels like both a balm and a knife, smoothing and cutting at once. I nodded. We were too far out to swim toward each other that day. But she had said it, and that matters. It didn't erase the ledger. It didn't unspend the money. It didn't bring my child back. But it put a line on a page we all had to read. After the service, as people hugged and hovered and waited for cues, I sat on a folding chair and took off my shoes. Janelle brought me water and a granola bar like I might be hungry in a way I could solve. Ava kissed my cheek. "You did right by her," she said. Wes hugged me and didn't try to make it bigger than it was. 3 months later, in February, we finally went before a mediator. The room smelled like stale coffee and copy paper. Derek arranged our papers in neat stacks. My parents sat together on the other side, small in a way I had not seen before. The mediator, a woman in her 50s with sharp glasses, asked us to outline our positions. Derek spoke like a person who believed in gravity. Funds raised under the representation that they would assist with medical and living expenses were used for unrelated events, he said, and slid the bank statements across the table like a fact. We are seeking repayment of those amounts plus fees. Mom didn't argue the withdrawals. She argued the intention. "I thought we could talk to each other," she said, and the mediator nodded like she'd heard that sentence in many costumes. We settled. It was not a dramatic win, nor did I go home with a check I could wave around as proof I was right. They agreed to a repayment plan. The total was smaller than the sum of feelings. The legal thing did what legal things do. It created a paper trail that made future arguments easier to reference. I took the first repayment and donated part of it to the pediatric wing in Maddie's name. I bought a tree for the courtyard at Summit Regional, a small maple that will outgrow me, and when I stood by it the day they planted it and the wind moved through it, the sound was an echo of a lullaby I used to hum to my daughter in the car. I stopped reading the family chat. I answered texts when they felt like questions worth answering. Kelly sent a picture of her holding a sonogram in June, and I texted back, "Congratulations," because it seemed like the cleanest thing to say. Mom asked if I wanted to come by for dinner in August. I wrote, "Not yet," and didn't explain. Not yet is a hope with scaffolding. I went back to the library part-time, then full. I moved to a ground-floor apartment with a small patio where I put 2 pots and grew tomatoes that tasted like sunlight melted into sugar. On the nights when the air was soft and my bones didn't feel like glass, I took a chair outside and sat with the map of the sky until it looked like a thing I could live under. Janelle told me bad jokes until they were good. Miss Carlson got me to apply for a scholarship, and I started taking night classes in healthcare advocacy because I have learned the language of forms too well to not use it for someone else. Grief is a lifelong roommate. Some mornings she empties the dishwasher and sits on the couch quietly with me. Some nights she drags a chair across the floor until the noise keeps me up. I keep the binder on a shelf in my bedroom. It's heavier than paper. The best part of my day is the part where I say her name out loud. Sometimes in the past tense, which feels like betrayal until I remember that tense is a grammar problem and my child is not. Voicemail transcription, saved on my phone, timestamped 2:17 a.m., 8 months before she died. "Okay," I whispered, holding the phone an inch from my mouth so the room's rules wouldn't get mad at me. "It's you and me now, kiddo. You're sleeping. Your mouth is open. You drool like a tiny dragon. I'm so proud of you for picking strawberry jello even though you hate it. I'm proud of you for making the nurse laugh today when you asked if the 4-pole could come to the park. I'm proud that you asked me if you can do hard things. You can. But I'm going to tell you something, because I wish someone had told me when I was 6, you don't have to. You don't have to be brave to earn anything. You don't have to be quiet to make other people feel good. You don't have to go anywhere you don't want to. You are already enough." The end. Okay, that's not the end. But that's the end of this voice note. I love you more than anything. If I have to move heaven and earth, no, that's not a thing. I will move furniture and mountains. You are my best thing. You are my heart. I love you. Good night. What I learned. Boundaries over blood isn't a slogan. It's a practice you do in 1,000 small decisions that look like not answering a text right away or saying "not yet" when someone wants access to your pain for their comfort. It looks like making a binder and calling legal aid and asking for a different nurse on the nights when the energy in the room isn't right. Found family is not a consolation prize. It's real, and it builds itself out of the people who show up with granola bars and jokes and a way to say your kid's name without making it about them. It's Mr. Patel running the morning carpool. It's Ava tucking a blanket under your arms. It's a social worker who says "we" like she means it. The smallest voices expose the deepest truths. A 6-year-old saying "my head is tired" will change your life faster than a parent with a spreadsheet. A nurse pointing at your plate and saying, "when's the last time you ate?" will save you from forgetting your own body. Receipts matter. Not because you want to turn your life into a court case, but because chaos is loud and paper is quiet. Paper gives you a way to walk back through the wild and remember where the path splits. Integrity is expensive. You will lose things. Some of them you meant to lose. Some you did not. You will write checks your heart can't cash and work out a payment plan later. It's still worth it. Grief doesn't resolve. It becomes, like your bones, a part of your structure. But one day you'll bite into a tomato you grew and remember that the world still makes sweetness. You'll sit under a tree named for your kid, and the leaves will move like the sea you haven't seen in years, and you'll think, "she would have liked this," and the thought will not break you. It will hold you.